pushing me and prodding me until I sort of figured out what I wanted to do with it. And so that is one of the most important things about submitting. So if you have a story that has been looked at by an editor or a couple of editors, they'll probably help you make it better. And so that by the time you're submitting to a competition, it's very good quality work. So that's the other reason why I sort of tell people not to keep their writings under their pillows, because you need other people to look at it and sort of help you improve it poorly until it becomes what you want it to be.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, Rahema.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I didn't like being called Rush. Anyway, I think I first self-reject like a lot before. The most recent rejection I remember is by Shamini Review, I think it's a magazine. But yeah, I see like a lot of them on Twitter and I'm like, yeah, what I can, submit, but I self-reject or sometimes I just procrastinate, and then by the time the deadline is with me, I don't have the story. So yeah, I didn't know how much to say about the submitting to journals, but yeah, it's a good thing. I've done some for Kalahari.
Have you been published by Kalahari?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think Kalahari, yeah, so when I actually get to do it, I get published, but now the self-rejection is just what happens to me the most, so I don't really submit.
Hi Raj, did you have friends who read your work? Or is it straight from your computer to the electronic journal?
Most of the times I work on it. I work like really close to the deadline. So I work.
Typical Kenyan.
Yes.
Okay.
I work on the deadline and then I send it.
Could you give her the microphone so that we can? Yeah.
Yeah, so most of the work on the deadline, but maybe that's something you can improve on.
I think it's always really nice to have someone look at it, because they could give you really good feedback.
Yeah, and I think, Gloria, what everyone should know here is that now this is your community. The reason we are here is because we want to create a community of writers. So you better get to know the person that is next to you, because they could be your reader. And if you're not close to someone, then maybe you should move to someone, so that you get to know someone, and that is how you create a writer's community. Yeah? And the big one is here, so get to know this lady. Yes, brothers.
Yeah, she has just mentioned something crucial. I think, if I remember, on 14th December, we'll have the deadline for the submission of the Afritondo.
Yes.
Are you aware of that? Okay.
And before you go to that, 31st is actually the last day. 1st of November.
Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then there's the Ake.
Yes.
Yeah. Then there's Afritondo.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's remember those deadlines.
So what happens if I, like myself, if I say that I'll write the last minute, I will not make it, because you find at Kenelo, we're working on a case digest. You have like 60 cases you need to analyze, and then maybe there's another one in between. I'm also a law student. I'm also winding up my master's in philosophy of care. So you find if all these things juggle, and maybe in the last week you have like a cut, you just can't submit. And if you win, you'll be sure to work.
And I think we are going to talk about that. Sorry, not to talking, but then after this, I just want us now to get into maybe boy first, and then we'll go to how much is that dog in the window. But then the whole idea of marinating your story, like how long should it take? Do you just write and then submit, or write and then do what Gloria is saying, like read through, ask questions, get somebody else to read, and or just get out of a cut and write one and send it.
On my side, actually I remember there is a short story I wrote that was last year. When the Pan-African Organization at Medical is an anthology called Voices That Sing Behind the Veil. So I'm the royalist group, and I just made the call. So I wrote this story because I had been thinking about this issue for long. So it took me 4 hours actually to finish it. And then after that, I think I kept on going through it, but it was like the deadline. So I sent it, and of course it qualified. But I'm sure they made some editing on it, even though they never because it was like met guys across the world submitted students from Africa and outside. But most of the stories currently, like after the class review, I finish and then I have someone go through. Actually, two people, because there's one person who is so rigorous in grammar, but not such like informed on the flow of the story, on the character development. But gonna grammarly check, like they can check each, they can read each sentence on the punctuation and all that. So these are two different people, and I can suggest maybe if we can start with the one on the flow of the story and the content, because once that's perfect, then now you can go with someone polished and the grammar and everything as the final draft. I think that can
Format content.
Yes.
Okay, good. Great. So, anyone else who would like to say something? Yes, please. I didn't get your name, so now.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Esther Musendi. Just to build on what Resh said, I self-reject a lot. And this started because, okay, I have submitted to several African literary journals, but never got accepted into any of them. Nowhere, there's Kalahari. The only one that have been published in is Writers Space Africa, Nigeria. Yeah, and I submitted, was it Shallow Review, I think, and Zuki Swawana goes to me, and she sent me an email telling me that I did not make the story my own.
She's a very good teacher.
Yeah, she told me I did not make the story my own, and oh my god, I nearly cried because I did not understand what she meant. And then
She tells you did not make your own story your own.
I was trying to write a historical
Fiction, yeah.
Yeah, so she asked me, are you from this community you're trying to base your character on? And I'm like, yes. Then you did not make it your own.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Did you ask her what she meant by that?
Yeah, I did, but she told me I'm just giving you homework. Go read stories from Israel magazine. She gave me a list. But I just want to talk to her and ask her what did you actually mean. But surprisingly, I have sent stories to other publications, especially in the UK, and they have been published.
Wow, that's good. Well done.
Yeah, there's Amaka, there's Meeting of Minds. They really like to publish African or Black voices. Yeah, and as Gloria says, if you get a good editor, they help you to see your story in another light, like focus. Yeah, because the first time I sent my story to one of the editors, she sort of redirected me, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is what I was going on. Yeah, but as for the African literary scene, still trying.
Yeah, I think we all keep trying, and at some point we get to this level where we can get published, because even the win, Gloria, like, it took you some time. How did you feel when you won? Like the milestone scholarship, how did it?
Well, of course, I felt really good.
Yeah.
I felt validated, just like Rehema. No, you said you'd like to be coached?
Resh.
Like Resh said, sometimes you get so many rejections until you start to doubt your own work. You start to imagine, okay, am I really even, is this really even something worth pursuing? Yeah, so when I won the Morning's one, I remember the first thing I felt validated, like someone has actually read my work and seen my work and sort of tried to even, you understand, giving me a nod. Yeah. Then I happen to like money. I don't know about you. It did come with some good money, so that was also, hey, I was very happy about that. And the other thing that it did, the most important thing is that at that time I'd been thinking of transitioning from my career as a teacher to writing full time. But I was postponing it. I wanted to do it, but I kept saying, okay, I'll do it next year, I'll do it next year. So it gave me an opportunity to take the leap, and also just to focus on writing for 1 year, because they pay you every month for a whole year to sit and write. So you can read, I know I'm the kind of writer who I have to read a lot for me to write. So I would wake up in the morning and do nothing but read it. And it felt like, for me, that feels like, no, not like a job, like vacation. I don't know. Because I like to read, I read all the time. So for you
but did you guys just hear what Gloria said? Like, she left a permanent job. Yeah? We are talking about TSC, the loans that come with TSC, you can take up to 5 million.
Yeah.
Are you crazy? What did your parents even say?
They were actually very supportive. Yeah, my parents are
Wow.
very, because I've been talking to them, they knew I'm trying, and like I told you, my dad used to write. So I would say I was very lucky because I came from a family of people who appreciate sort of books, yeah. So they supported me. They actually, in fact, COVID so I resigned, and then the same, before I even finished my serving my notice, COVID came and schools were closed, and I had some friends were like, in fact, come and chill here for like 2-3 months and start your book, and then you go to Nairobi later. So I felt like I was very supported. So anyway, yeah, like I've told you, I was happy. Yeah, and I felt like very validated by this win. And it gave me an opportunity to sit and to just focus on nothing else but writing. And you realize that you grow. You're not just reading for entertainment, but you're reading because you're a writer. So you're reading with it's called reverse engineering, where you're taking apart someone's story to try and put it together, to sort of get into the mind of these writers and to see how did they write the story. Yeah, so I would read stories with the purpose of just understanding, different aspects. Sometimes it's at sentence level, sometimes it's the structure of the story or the language or different things in stories. So yeah, I hope I've answered the question.
Yeah, you have. There are those people who say, you just talked about money, there are those people who say that writing doesn't pay. I mean, there's always this thing, there's always this picture that is painted of writers, and they are these, old and inemaciated with a bowl. Nothing in, maybe it's just a coin, a 10-cent coin. What do you have to say about that? Like, how much was it again?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but really, what do you have to say about people who say that, writing doesn't pay?
I don't think that is true, because if I could just use my own experience, I finished the magazine and I have been making an income.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say develop other skills around writing. Like if you just want to stay in the writing field, then someone talked about a different type of editing. I think they're talking about developmental editing, where you get a story, you can read through, you can help with structure and different things. You could also be a proofreader, you could also be a copy editor. All those things are in the writing field. So they'll help you apart from just making you money, because if you proofread for guys and copy edit and blah blah, you can make money. But apart from that, it will also, of course, as a writer, at the back of your mind, you're always, when you're reading someone else's story, you're also always thinking about your own story. So you pick some of these things, even without knowing, and you're going to use those things to improve your own writing. But in terms of making money, I think yes, you can grow other skills, all the skills I'm talking about, and then you can make money. Like what I do now, I divide my year into two. During the first half of the year, I only write my novel and my short stories. I work on my own work. And in the second half of the year, I take jobs. I ghostwrite. I do business. I told you I was a business teacher. I do business writing for corporates, and I proofread and edit. So yeah, that's how I manage to do this thing.
And I'm assuming that most of these things come about because of the network that you've established with other people in the writing world.
Yes. So there's network, but networks alone cannot do. So apart from the networks, you have to prove that you're doing a good job. So make sure you're consistently growing yourself, learning, and sort of giving the best work you can give out there, because that's what most of my clients are usually referrals. So this person refers me to this. So like there's a time I got so many referrals, I had to turn down those jobs and told them, hey, I can only start working with you in November or in December, because they were coming fast and like really, really fast. So I think that sort of answers your question about whether they're jobs and
may pokea huo upako of so many things that you just say, wait until December. Gloria, the other day, I think it's about 2 weeks, boy came out, you know, and you know, boy, I remember reading Boy in 2016, you know, and the other day, the whole publication came out. Tell us about that. Tell us about Boy. Boy is a short story, and it was the winning short story in that collection. So just tell us a bit about Boy and the short story collection that Boy is in.
So Boy is the first short story I ever wrote, and I wrote it in 2016, which is the first time I attempted to write a story. And I wrote it because back then I was a teacher in Nairobi, and one of my colleagues, I remember I saw an article in the Standard newspaper saying that the Subaltern Defense Force guys were regrouping. And I think you must have heard about this Subaltern Defense in passing. There was a land conflict somewhere in Western Kenya, Mount Elgon region. So I saw this newspaper article and took it to a colleague of mine who I knew is from Mount Elgon, and I told her, hey, have you seen this article? Just to make conversation because she's from the area. And what she told me shocked me. She told me, hey, do you know I grew up in this place? And that I was in Mount Elgon when this war was happening. Actually, my family was affected. All our house was burned down. All my certificates were burned in the house. And we left with nothing. And then she said, actually, I think this war is what killed my mother. Because after the war, she was so traumatized, she could not survive. So she ended up just sort of dying. So I remember that shook me, and after that I went to read. I sort of became a little obsessed with that, so I went to read newspaper articles and look for videos, YouTube, blah blah, Nation newspaper, Standard, to try and find out how the war, like more about this war. And what I found out is that it was much, the stories I found were a bit, to me they looked whitewashed, or they're these bad guys, they were very simplistic. They are the bad guys. Who is Matwake? The leader of that Matwake. It's not Matako, it's Matwake. Yeah, the leader of that war, that land conflict. So this is the bad guy, according to the articles I read. And then there are the good guys, who are the Kenyan army who came to rescue the community. And then everybody lives happily ever after. I'm like, no, this is not the story. Because I heard the story from my friend. And because her experience was so personal, I think it sort of resonated with me. And I realized also that the articles I was reading, they had this I didn't like the way they represented the women in the articles. And it was as if the women were just sort of bystanders. But that is not true. These women were raped by, first, the police who came to try and restore order, but they couldn't. And then the militiamen, the Subaltern Defense guys came and raped some of those women. And then after that, we also had the Kenya army. So you understand, they've gone through 3 phases of rape. Some of them have children that they bore because of this rape. But what stories are we getting in the newspaper? Oh, the women are saying, oh, thank you, we want to thank the government because now peace has been restored, we can go back to our lives. I was like, no, I'm going to write this story first because I want to sort of tell it from the point of maybe a girl, child who grew up in the area. And secondly, I want to write this story because I want to tell the story properly, to set the record straight. And much later, a few weeks ago, I was talking to my friend Paselero Kantai.
Yes.
And Pasa told me something. He told me there's a time he went to Mount Elgon to write a story about the Subaltern Defense Force. Mm-hmm. And the moment he landed in that town, about 50 women were waiting for him. And like we've been told, you're the international journalist who's come here to listen to our stories. We have stories that we want to tell you. We want to tell you about the children that we bore from the rape by these army soldiers. And we want to tell you, and of course, he's just going to do, I think, a story as part of a picture he was doing across the country. But you can see how hungry those women are for their stories to be told. How hungry they are for the record to be set straight. And so if we don't use fiction to do this, then who's going to do it? So I feel like, yeah, that's the background for Boy. That's why I wrote it. And also just because, yeah, that's about it for me.
And I always tell the people that I interact with that here is better than there. Like, sometimes when you see someone writing a story, like, how come I've never thought about that? But there's always this story that many people write, you know. There's always the suffering girl, and she comes to Nairobi and she becomes a judge. What would you tell people who write? Like, where do you get these ideas? It's just, did you just decide that I'm going to go to Western and I'm going to go to Mount Elgon and I'm going to write about war and I'm going to represent? Like, how do you generate ideas for your stories?
I had a sort of, I don't know whether it was J.R.R. Martin's or Stephen King. One of them said that's the least favorite question of writers. Nobody likes to be asked where they get their ideas from, because you probably lie. So I think for me, I'm very, very keen on, first, history seems to be a big thing for me. I'm very interested in histories and sort of the kind of histories we have from our different communities. So I'm very interested in history, but also I get ideas from anywhere. There's a day I was up country visiting my parents, and then it started to rain. I was in the middle of town, and I had to go and take shelter in a building. And then I just started thinking, what if it starts to rain and you're in a place walking down the road, and you need shelter, but there's nowhere to be sheltered, except there's a shop, but it belongs to your enemy. What happens? Are you going to shelter there, or are you going to just walk in the rain? And that sort of developed into a short story. It's called Shelter, which I hope to turn into a book. And it's because it sort of brought out this conflict thing. You understand? Sometimes, I don't know how many of you visit their village homes often, and when you're up country, there's usually this little, should I call them little battles, little wars? Like, you understand? Everybody knows about everybody, and then everybody's in everybody's business. And I just thought that would be an interesting book to write about, yeah, just how people are in each other's faces, and then they get conflict. You don't talk to somebody, and you go to church, and someone is super righteous, the rest of you are sinners. So yeah, I always just get my ideas from anywhere and everywhere. And sometimes halfway through a book or through a story, you get a lot of ideas, but you just write them down and keep them in your notebook for later.
Look around you when you go home, and you know you've been given an idea of how to go about getting your stories. Let's go back to you said me Boy. What did I even tell you? I read it and I said I must have said some nasty things about Boy.
And you read your email.
Yeah, but then if you compare now what you were and what you are right now, like what would you say in terms of growth, like from that time to this time?
Well, first to your email. Yeah, so there's something I was trying to do with that story, and I think Lucas missed it. Because he asked me what kind of English, I didn't use proper English. I sort of bent my English, and that is because I'm very interested in something called self-translation. And self-translation to me is where I speak Swahili. Or we grew up speaking Swahili and your mother tongue, a mix of everything, isn't it? But when I'm writing my novels and my stories, I'm writing them in English. So what happens? Because I think in Swahili, or my mother tongue, Kimaragoli, and then when I'm I interact in those languages every day. But I sit down to write, and what I'm doing, first of all, is that I'm translating my culture, and I'm translating my everyday moments into English for somebody else, because we write in English, isn't it? Or in these other languages, European languages. So what I was trying to do with Boy is I was trying to write the way we speak. You understand? To just translate it, yes, but to let it retain its authenticity, what it means. And that's why in some of those slides you find something like, Mama said that, Mama asked Baba that, does he think a child is like a clock which you can lend to a neighbor and then get it back? What does that make you think of? Single, utaomba mtu, mama. So you're trying to get this Swahili and this other sort of things from your language, the little intricate things, and then translate them. So it's always very important for me as a writer to do that, to sort of try and write it as it would be from, if people are speaking with Marangoli, I want to bring it to the page, translate it exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I asked that question because of what we are here to discuss. How much is that doggy in the window? Like, that short story, if you read it, for those of you who have read it, you realize that I was picturing the maid, you know, and it's like she's speaking. The language that Gloria uses is exactly what a house help would use. And that is what you're talking about right now. And now we want to talk about how much is that doggy in the window. Which
I feel like there's a question you asked that I haven't responded. What is the second part of that question?
Like, I wanted you to talk about growth because I see the growth. Like, that time I did see what you were talking about, but right now, when I read this story, I saw exactly what you were saying. So, for me, it was a matter of growth. Like, at that time, you're trying to. I was telling one of the ladies in the audience. You know, it's like in the Bible. Eli and Samuel. You know, when God was talking in the first place, for those of you who are religious, you know, Samuel thought it was Eli, you know. So when you are starting out with writing, it's like you try to find your footing. It's like you're trying to get your place in the writing world, and you try this and it doesn't come out. You try this, but it takes quite some time for you to be able to get out. Now, when I read, I know, oh, this is Gloria. I don't have to struggle. Like if you're reading Googie, you know, no one has to tell you Achebe, that this is Achebe. You know it. And so I was talking about that growth because really I've seen you grow and I've seen you work so hard, get to the level where you are able to write something like how much is that dog in the window, which I think is an amazing story.
Thank you. And yeah, growth happens and it takes time, but first when you start writing, I feel like a lot of us, you try to emulate the writers you like. So you're reading Achimamanda and you're like, okay, no, you try to make your sentences like hi, you try to, because at that time you don't know, you don't have your voice yet, you're not clear about your voice yet. But this changes as you grow, as you write more, then you begin to understand, this is how I like my sentences, this is the rhythm, you understand? Maybe sometimes some people mix long and short sentences, others just prefer different things, but those things come poly as you grow, as your writing grows, and as you write and edit and sort of get rejected. The more you get rejected, the more you edit stories and send them out, isn't it? Yeah, they reject it here, you edit it, improve it, send it somewhere else. And that's just it. Yeah, the one thing I've realized is that people speak about rejections with such sadness. That should not be the case because we all get rejected. Like if I showed you my submittable page, I've told you it's rejected. Yeah, so let's not speak about it with so much sadness. Rework those stories, have somebody look at them, send them out to other journals, to other places. Just rejection is part of this game. And even if you're Stephen King or whatever, you get rejected. This guy get rejected as well. So let's not forget that.
I remember we had Googie at the University of Nairobi at one time, and there were these two fellows that I had rejected, you know. And they asked Googie, Prof, have you ever been rejected? But you see, they're not looking at Googie. You know, they look at me. Prof, have you? But one of the things that Googie said that it is good that he was rejected, like Professor Ngugi Wadiongo, he was rejected. And he says he's glad that he was rejected because he would have been so embarrassed to have that work that was rejected being read by anyone. And I think it comes with the time. And let's talk about this short story that was published in the UK in white paper. How much is that dog in the window? When you read that story, it sort of like makes you go back, especially those of us who grew up in the village, you know. Like it takes you back to your teenage years, you know, growing up as an adolescent, and you know, the sweet 16 and how you become rebellious. So Gloria, I wanted to start by asking you how the past has shaped your writing. You just talked about Toto Single, like those are the mushrooms and Zilizo Pendwa, you know. Like, how has it affected your writing?
When you ask me about the past, I think three things come to mind. First, I look at the past in terms of, like I've said, our histories, in terms of our histories of people. So in that way, the past affects me because I'm very interested in sort of, should I say, excavating the past, trying to make sense of it. Yeah, so yeah, that's the first way in terms of histories that we have. Secondly, the past affects me. When I think about the past, I also imagine, or also think about the literary past of this continent. I think about the way the 50s and the, you know, Achebe, and then much a bit later the Ngugis and Wallace Soyinka, the kind of stories they used to tell. And I'm very conscious or aware that at the time women also used to write. And we're talking about Mabel, and we're talking about Ama Ata Idol. But at the time, we just used to hear, like, the conversation was more around these men who used to write. So, that particular literary past has affected me because I know I stand here or I sit here because I sit here as a woman today because of the sort of the path of the doors that have been opened by these other women who came before us. And so I'm very conscious of the space that I occupy, and I try to take it with as much seriousness as I can because I know that in doing my best now and sort of opening doors for other young women, then I'm respecting that past, so that literary past which sort of sent women or put women on to the sidelines. Yeah, so that's something I'm always very, very conscious of as a writer, the literary past of this continent and the place women were assigned in it. And partly, when you speak about the past now, you want me to talk about how much that is going on.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say something about that because that is a song, you know.
Yeah. So it's a song that used to be very popular in the 90s. And what I did as I was writing that story, I was trying to sort of save this moment in time. I wanted to capture or to keep a particular memory, the memory of the radio in the 90s. And I don't know how many of you, yes, just maybe I and one or two other people, but the rest of us might be floating kidogo. So let me tell you, in the 90s, we didn't have social media, we didn't have computers, we didn't have even TVs. So before the TVs came at some point, it was the radio was the most popular. At least most families used to have radios. And the radio is very, very important because it used to have, especially in Western Kenya, which is where I was born, yeah, and where my folks are. So the radio used to be very, 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 very important because it had this program called Radio Salams Adhuguri, there was Salams Club. So people would send, the way people have influencers now, we had influencers then. Now an influencer would go to the post office and then pick out a letter and sort of a card. You buy a card in the post office, then write it, send it to KBC. Then KBC, during the Salams program the next day, they would read out, you know, nani anapea nani shout out, let's say. So they read out a shout out to the person you want to save. And then it had something at the end called ujumbe. So ujumbe ni kwamba kula na kulipa ndio mtindo wa kisasa. Something like that. They had all these wise wisdom words. And so I thought that was I've read a couple of newspaper articles about that, Salams Club, and how it's disappearing. Of course, now with social media, we have other influencers. So now, Walter Nyasi Shirima has been replaced by
Resh.
By Resh.
No.
And you know, somebody else has been replaced. So we had all these people, so those influencers, that kind of one. I saw this one is disappearing. And one of the things I wanted to read this story was to save part of that one that I found very, very interesting. So I was just trying to archive that particular memory that was very, very popular in the 90s.
Yeah,